Welcome back, everyone, to The Deep Dive. This time, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of FPGA design with Vivado.
Okay.
But specifically, it's non-project mode scripting.
Right.
And you're diving into this, you told me, to get a handle on more advanced FPGA development.
Yeah.
Which is it's a pretty cool area to explore. I mean, a lot of people stick with Vivado's project mode, which is,
Right.
It's a good way to get started.
Yeah.
But non-project mode, that's where the real power and flexibility are.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's almost like choosing between driving an automatic and a stick shift. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Non-project mode, you're in total control.
That's right. Yeah, you're writing TCL scripts to control every step of the design process. So
wow.
It can seem intimidating at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's really powerful.
Yeah.
It's great.
So let's sort of map out the territory here a little bit.
Okay.
We've got TCL mode, which is interactive, like typing commands in a terminal.
Right.
And then there's batch mode, where you run an entire script and you can automate the whole design process. Mm-hmm. So what kind of situations would call for one versus the other?
So TCL mode's great for experimentation.
Okay.
Learning.
Huh?
You can kind of try out different commands, see how they work.
Yeah.
Get immediate feedback. Batch mode is more for when you've kind of got a well-defined design flow, and you just want to automate it for repeatability and consistency.
All right.
So let's talk about the advantages of this whole scripting thing. What makes non-project mode so special?
Yeah.
I keep hearing about this granular control, but what does that actually mean in practice?
So imagine you're working on like a complex image processing pipeline for, say, a self-driving car.
Okay.
And you need to meet really stringent timing requirements, and you got to squeeze every ounce of performance out of the FPGA.
Non-project mode lets you fine-tune every aspect of the synthesis and implementation process.
Wow.
From the way logic is mapped to the placement of specific components on the chip. You can tweak optimization settings, experiment with different directives, and really get under the hood in a way that's simply not possible with project mode's point-and-click interface.
So it's like having a surgeon's scalpel instead of a butter knife.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
You can make very precise adjustments to optimize for speed, resource usage.
And this level of control is really essential when you're dealing with those large, complex designs where every nanosecond and every LUT matters.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's not just about doing things differently. It's about being able to do things you couldn't do at all in project mode.
Exactly.
Now, another thing that caught my eye is this concept of design checkpoints.
Okay.
They sound like a real time saver, especially for large designs.
Yeah.
That can take forever to process.
For sure.
What's the magic behind these checkpoints?
So let's say you've spent, hours working on a design, and you want to explore a different approach. In project mode, you'd have to start from scratch or make copies of your project files, which can get really messy.
Yeah.
With non-project mode, you can create these checkpoints. Which are technically .dcp files. They're kind of like snapshots of your design at a particular moment in time.
Oh, I see.
And you can then reload those checkpoints and pick up right where you left off without having to rerun that entire design flow.
So it's like having a time machine.
Exactly.
For your design.
Yeah.
That's incredibly useful.
Yeah, that's a great feature.
When you're iterating on a complex design and want to experiment with different options without wasting hours rerunning the same steps.
Yeah.
And speaking of saving time, doesn't non-project mode also offer faster build times compared to project mode?
It often does. Since non-project mode operates primarily in memory.
Okay.
It avoids that overhead of constantly reading and writing to disk, which can be a bottleneck for large projects.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between working on a document that's saved locally on your computer versus one that's stored in the cloud.
Right.
Local operations are generally much faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that speed advantage becomes even more significant when you factor in automation, right?
Oh, for sure.
Because non-project mode is all about scripts.
Right.
Seems like it would fit perfectly into a continuous integration, continuous delivery pipeline.
But, you can integrate non-project mode scripts into your automated build process.
Right.
Which means you can run builds on a regular basis, test them, and deploy them without any manual intervention.
Right.
This ensures consistency and repeatability, which is crucial for large, complex projects.
Yeah, makes sense. And then there's version control. I mean, everyone uses some kind of version control system these days, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But how does that work with FPGA projects?
Yeah.
Especially in non-project mode.
So that's where one of the big advantages of non-project mode really shines through.
Okay.
Because with project mode, you're dealing with these massive binary project files.
Right.
Which are just a nightmare to manage with version control systems like Git.
Yeah.
It's like trying to track changes in a giant,
Right.
constantly shifting sand dune.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
It's not pretty.
Yeah.
You end up with all these conflicts and merge nightmares.
That means
It becomes almost impossible to figure out who changed what and when.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With non-project mode, it's completely different.
Okay.
Your entire design flow is captured in a TCL script,
Right.
which is just a plain text file.
Yeah.
This means you can easily track changes, see who made what modifications,
Right.
revert back to previous versions without any headaches.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between trying to assemble a puzzle with a blindfold on
Right.
versus having like a clear picture to guide you.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And because it's just text,
Right.
you can use all the standard version control tools and workflows that
Yep.
developers are already familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
No need to learn any specialized tools or processes.
Yeah, exactly.
Just for FPGA projects.
And you could even embed the Git commit number into your design
Oh, wow.
during synthesis.
Okay.
This allows you to trace back the exact version of the code
Right.
that was used to create a particular build,
Wow.
which is incredibly valuable for debugging and ensuring reproducibility.
Okay, so far, non-project mode sounds pretty amazing,
Yeah.
but I know there has to be a catch, right?
Well, there's always a trade-off, right?
Yeah.
Nothing's perfect,
Nothing is perfect in this world.
especially when it comes to complex engineering tools.
Right.
So yeah, non-project mode does come with a steeper learning curve. Compared to the point-and-click world of project mode,
Right.
you need to be comfortable with TTL scripting,
Yeah.
which can be a barrier for some users.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like learning to drive a stick shift.
Okay.
It takes more effort and skill up front,
Right.
but it gives you much more control and flexibility in the long run.
So if you're working on a relatively simple design,
Yeah.
maybe project mode is still the way to go.
Yeah. For simple designs, project mode might be a better choice, at least initially.
Okay.
You know, the GUI can be easier to use for getting started,
Right.
especially if you're new to FPGA development.
Mm-hmm.
But as your designs become more complex
Right.
and you need more control and flexibility,
Yeah.
that's when non-project mode really starts to shine.
That makes sense. You wouldn't use a chainsaw to cut a piece of paper.
Exactly.
So there are some other potential challenges to consider.
Yeah.
For example, debugging
Yeah.
can be trickier in non-project mode.
It can be, yeah. You might need to rely more on log files and command line tools
Right.
rather than those graphical debugging features
Right.
that are available in project mode.
So it's like being a detective in the old days,
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
relying on your intuition and a magnifying glass
Yeah.
instead of all that fancy forensic technology.
You need to be comfortable reading through log files, tracing signals,
Mm-hmm.
understanding the underlying behavior of your design in more detail,
Right.
and integrating IP cores. Those pre-built blocks of functionality
Right.
can also be more involved in non-project mode.
Okay.
You often need to write TCL scripts to configure and connect these IP cores,
Yeah.
which can be a bit more time-consuming
Yeah.
compared to the drag-and-drop ease
Right.
of project mode's IP integrator.
So there's definitely a trade-off there between the power and flexibility
Right.
of non-project mode and
Yeah.
the ease of use and convenience of project mode.
Exactly.
But what about hardware export? I've heard that there can be issues with exporting designs created in non-project mode, especially those containing block design containers.
Yeah, that's true. There can be some compatibility issues
Okay.
between non-project mode and certain aspects of hardware export,
Right.
especially when BVCs are involved.
Okay.
It's not always a showstopper, but it's something to be aware of
Yeah.
and potentially factor into your decision-making process.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've seen the strengths and weaknesses, the pros and the cons
Right.
of both project mode and non-project mode.
For sure.
But at the end of the day, how do we decide which approach is right
Yeah.
for a particular project?
It really boils down to your priorities and your project needs.
Okay.
So if you prioritize ease of use,
Mm.
you're working on a relatively simple design, project mode might be the best choice.
Right.
But if you need that maximum control, flexibility, and you're comfortable with scripting,
Yeah.
non-project mode is probably the way to go.
Oh.
And of course, there's always the possibility of using a hybrid approach.
Yeah.
Starting in project mode for initial design,
right,
and then transitioning to non-project mode
right,
for more advanced customization and optimization later on.
That hybrid approach sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
I can see how it might offer the best of both worlds.
Yeah, for sure.
But what about the transition between the two modes? Can you seamlessly switch back and forth?
The transition isn't always seamless.
Okay.
And there might be some compatibility issues to work through.
Yeah.
But Vivado does provide a helpful command called write project mood that can generate a TCL script based on your project mode project.
Oh, okay.
This can give you a starting point for your non-project mode script.
Right.
And kind of help bridge the gap between the two modes.
That's a handy tool to have in your toolbox.
Definitely.
So it sounds like there's no one-size-fits-all answer here.
Right.
It's all about carefully considering your project's specific requirements.
Your team's skill set.
Yeah.
Trade-offs involved.
But let's dive a little deeper into the scenarios
where
non-project mode really shines, where it becomes the clear winner.
So one obvious scenario is when you're working on those large, complex designs with demanding performance requirements.
Mm-hmm.
If you need to squeeze every ounce of performance out of your FPGA, non-project mode gives you that fine-grained control and optimization capabilities to achieve that.
Okay.
It's like having a Formula One race car where you can fine-tune every aspect of the engine, suspension, aerodynamics to gain that extra edge.
So it's not just about making things work. It's about making them work as efficiently and effectively as possible.
Absolutely.
And another area where non-project mode excels is automation.
Yes, definitely.
If you want to create a streamlined, repeatable build process, non-project mode is your best friend.
Absolutely.
You can script every step of the design flow, from synthesis to implementation to bitstream generation, and integrate it into your automated build system. This ensures consistency, reduces errors, and frees up your team to focus on more creative and strategic tasks.
It's like having a factory assembly line that cranks out perfect designs with the push of a button.
Now, here's a scenario for you.
Okay.
Imagine you're working on a project where you need to frequently share updates with collaborators, maybe even across different geographical locations. Which mode would you choose in that situation?
I think we both know the answer to that one.
Yeah.
With its version control friendliness, non-project mode would be the clear winner there.
Yeah.
It would allow for that seamless collaboration, easy tracking of changes, eliminate those headaches of dealing with those massive project mode files.
Exactly. Yeah. Those plain text TCL scripts are a dream to work with when it comes to collaboration and version control. No more merge conflicts, no more confusion about who changed what. And that brings us to a really fascinating thought. What if we could combine the best of both worlds?
Okay.
Could there be situations where using a hybrid approach, starting in project mode for the initial design, and then transitioning to non-project mode for advanced customization and optimization, might be advantageous? That hybrid approach. It's a really interesting idea. What kind of challenges or benefits do you see with that kind of workflow?
Well, one challenge could be, managing that transition between the two modes. It's not always a seamless handoff. There might be some compatibility issues to iron out, but the benefits could be significant. You could leverage the user friendliness and IP integration, ease of project mode during those initial stages of your design, and then unleash the full power and control of non-project mode when you need to fine-tune performance, optimize resource utilization, or automate specific tasks.
So you're essentially getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
You can start with a more visual, intuitive approach, and then kind of dive into the scripting world when you need more granular control.
It's like starting with the blueprint. And then switching to a 3D modeling tool to kind of refine the details.
Exactly. It's all about choosing the right tool for the right job. And sometimes that might involve using a combination of tools and techniques to achieve the best possible results.
Absolutely.
Okay, one last question before we wrap up. We've been talking about all the technical benefits of non-project mode. But what about the impact on the design process itself? Do you think using non-project mode changes the way designers think about their work?
I think it definitely can. Non-project mode forces you to Think more systematically about your design flow to break down the process into those discrete steps.
Right.
And to understand how each step affects the final outcome. It's like the difference between following a recipe and actually understanding the chemistry behind baking.
So it's not just about learning a new tool.
Right.
It's about developing a deeper understanding of the underlying principles of FPGA design.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Thanks.
I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've explored the ins and outs of Vivado non-project mode scripting, weighed its advantages and disadvantages, and even pondered the potential of a hybrid approach that combines the best of both worlds.
It's an interesting concept, for sure.
And hopefully we've sparked some new ideas and inspired you to dive deeper into this fascinating aspect of FPGA design.
I hope so.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
Until next time, happy designing.